Here are 7 underrated guitar purchases that improved my playing. I'm not sponsored by any brand, but wanted to share stuff I found over the years that really made it easier to play the guitar. I'm going to start with cheaper items in the $5 to $10 range, then go to more expensive items in the $20 to $30 range, but ones that can really help you practice and play better. So starting off, we got these Gauge 9 light top, heavy bottom strings. So these are great since they're one size down from the standard Gauge 10 strings, so they feel super just smooth and light to play on the fingers, and just really easy to bend as well. But since they're heavy bottom, the bottom strings have more or less the same thickness as standard Gauge 10 strings, so they preserve that nice warm tone from the standard strings while being way easier to play overall. I know that if anything, a lot of people love playing with higher gauge strings for that even thicker tone, especially blues players. But what really changed my mind was this B.B. King story I heard. So one time B.B. King, the king of blues, overheard Billy Gibbons, the guitar player for the blues rock band ZZ Top, playing Gauge 11 and 12 strings, and asked him, "Hey, why are you making so hard on yourself?" And hearing the king of blues say that, Billy Gibbons started exploring lighter gauge strings until he settled on Gauge 7 extra light strings. So I thought, if legends like B.B. King and Billy Gibbons play lighter gauge strings, and they sound so good, there's no reason I shouldn't just switch. Plus, most of the tone of an electric guitar comes from the amp, pickup, and other gears in between anyway, string being one of the less noticeable ones, especially when it's just one size apart. Next, we got string lube. Pretty popular in the metal community. Part of what it does is that it prolongs the life of your strings and frets, so you don't get worn out as fast, so you don't have to change strings as often too. But another thing it unlocks is speed. It makes the fretboard way smoother, allowing your fingers to move way faster and just do fast runs more easily. It's super easy to apply. I got this GHS brand fast fret lube, and it already comes with a brush, so I just brush it through the fretboard, then use the cloth they prepared to wipe off the excess 2-3 times over the fretboard, and the fretboard will naturally absorb the rest. I know some people love applying it every single time before they pick up the guitar to play, but personally I just do it here and there, and usually after changing strings and after giving my fretboard a good wipe first to get any dust off. And super cheap. Got it for like $8 off Amazon, so highly recommend trying it, and if anything, seeing it as a way to keep the guitar clean and playable for longer. Then we've got a spider capo. You might be familiar with regular capos where you place them on a fret across all strings, say the 2nd fret, and then you do a C shape, and then that becomes a D major chord. But a spider capo is different, so you get to choose exactly which frets you want this capo to press down on, so it opens up some really cool tunings. For example, here, I'm having the spider capo press down on the 2nd fret, but just across the bottom 4 strings, essentially kind of forming an A major chord with the open strings. And I can do something like... And there are endless other cool tunings you can play around with too with the spider capo. If you're interested in learning more about this A major tuning specifically and the cool chords you can play on top, check out this video where I go over the 2 main chord shapes you can use to create beautiful chords with this A major tuning. The next underrated purchase is fret wraps. Again, pretty popular in the metal community, but not so much in the blues community that I come from. So essentially you kind of place it between the nut and tuning pegs of the guitar near the head, and it blocks out unwanted noise when you play. So here's a comparison, first without fret wraps, then with. As you could hear, there's just way less noise, especially on a hard funk riff like the one I just played where string muting is key. Obviously, I could just practice and do a better string muting technique, but it just really comes in handy when I just want to focus purely on creating or jamming. So I try not to overuse this when I practice at home, but definitely sometimes when I record or jam. And super cheap, so highly encourage you guys to pick up one and just play around with it, try it out for yourself. Moving on, we got a sweatband. Super underrated tool in my opinion, and again, one that I see a lot of middle players use. I put it kind of between my wrist and elbow area, so it provides cushion between my forearm and the guitar when I'm playing. I find it super handy when I'm jamming and standing up and playing, so I don't end up with a sore forearm after jamming for like an afternoon. It also helps absorb sweat for people like me who sweat a lot after playing standing up and walking around. One thing I noticed is that a sweatband is especially handy when you play a guitar with a bigger and thicker body, since on those guitars, your forearm would feel the body of the guitar more and lean on it more. But for example, for me, I'm primarily a Fender Stratocaster player, and these guitars are known to have pretty slender bodies. So for me, it's not as big of an issue most of the time, but when I switch to playing my acoustic, which is a way bigger body, I'd really feel my forearm tiring out and getting sore after playing for a little bit. I guess that explains why metal players love sweatbands, since the guitars tend to have crazier bodies. Another really cool item for improving your playing is a wireless cable system. To make it easier to just pick up my guitar and play, I used to keep my guitar plugged into an amp with my cable all the time, but it always gets tangled up pretty soon, especially all the other cords I have near my desk. Not to mention, it's just not very aesthetic having yet another cable in my room, so I tried a wireless guitar system, and now I can just pick up my guitar, turn my amp on, and just play without worrying about yet another cable. When I jam too, it's awesome because I can walk around, not worry about my cable not being long enough or it not being plugged in right. Now, one of the main complaints I hear regarding wireless guitar systems is that their sound quality is not as good compared to playing through a cable. So I got this really cheap wireless system off of Amazon for like 30 bucks, but the expensive ones get to upwards of like $200 or more. So let's hear how this cheap one sounds compared to playing through a cable, starting with the cable. Sounds pretty close to me in this test. Maybe slightly more body when playing through a cable. But again, I'm using like a really cheap $30 wireless guitar system. So I will say when I record a song or play a show live, I would still most likely use a cable, since that's the cheapest, reliable way to make sure I get good sound. But that's why if you only want to rely on a wireless guitar system, I highly encourage that you get something more on the higher end, like more $200 and above. There are plenty of professional touring guitar players using a wireless cable system to play shows night after night, like John Frusciante, the guitar player for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Look at him jumping around here playing the song Can't Stop Live. Next, we got locking tuners. Arguably my favorite item on the list. So locking tuners are essentially tuning pegs. So these things we turn when we tune on guitars, but they lock the strings in so the tuning stays better. But not just that, since they lock the strings in, it also makes changing strings way easier. It eliminates a few steps. When I change strings with regular tuning pegs, I have to first apply tension on the string I'm changing as it pierces through the tuning peg. Then I gotta turn the tuning peg so many times to get my desired note and pitch. And finally, I still gotta stretch the strings to make sure it stays in tune. But with a locking tuner, all I need to do is to pierce a string normally through the tuning peg without having to apply any tension at all. Then I just turn this knob on the back of the tuning peg counterclockwise to lock in the string. Then I tune to my desired pitch. Done. No stretching needed, since the locking mechanism minimizes string movement, so I don't need to stretch the strings to make sure they stay in tune, or at least not that much. They'll just stay in tune, and I can still tune however I wish. It's not like, since the strings are now locked, all of a sudden I gotta unlock them from the back each time I want to tune. You get the best of both worlds. You get the locking mechanism, but you don't lose the easy tuning accessibility. It's also super easy to replace your regular tuning pegs with locking tuners. All you need is a 10mm nut driver for most guitars, like my Fender Stratocaster. I use it to take out my existing tuning pegs by turning counterclockwise. Then I pop the new locking tuners in and tighten them with the nut driver again. Super simple. The entire process will take at most half an hour, including changing strings. And for me, it only took like 20. Super highly recommend locking tuners. I got the Fender official ones, so they're a bit more expensive at $60, but there are plenty of them on Amazon for like $20, $30. And either way, it's totally worth the money for all the time and effort, and saves me in changing strings and just making sure my strings stay in tune better. My only wish is for me to go through all my other guitars and replace all those tuning pegs with locking tuners so I can restring those faster too. That's it for the 7 purchases. Let me know if you guys would recommend any particular brand to get any of these 7 items from. And if you guys want to learn more about other underrated guitar gear, make sure to check out my other videos too. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.